we're talking about chapter 7 so far. Today, inshallah, we will finish chapter 7. We talked about lists, what to do with lists, methods of lists, how to copy lists, lots of stuff about lists. Type, processing lists. Now, nothing here is actually new. In all of the concepts here are exactly the same as before. The only difference here is we are using a list. That's it. But the concept is the same. List elements can be used in calculations. Of course, you can have a list that has the radiuses of different circles. You can get those numbers and use them in a mathematical formula to calculate the area of different circles. And it's not always about mathematical calculations. It can be anything really. Let's talk about calculating the total. The total, for example. In your lab, you have already seen this. How can I calculate the total for the elements inside the list? What do I need before the loop? What is it? I don't understand. Do I need length to calculate the total? No, I don't really need length to calculate the total. So before, yes, we need an accumulator. So I need the accumulator, set the accumulator to 0. Then in the loop, I iterate over the elements of the list, add all of the elements to the total, or to the accumulator. Type average, you have calculated the total. How do you calculate the average? This is where we need the len function. Very good. Do you need to count anything? Do you need to count? No. The len function already gives you the number of elements in a list. So you have the total divided by the len of that list, and that's it. A list can also be passed as an argument to a function. You can create a function that accepts a list. A list can also be returned from a function. I'll show you an example in a second. But before we jump into pie chart, you see this slide 21? Slide 21. Of course, the book assumes that we are covering the chapters in order. Meaning the book assumes that we have already covered chapter 6. That's why it's talking about files here. Okay? Inshallah, after we finish chapter 6, we will come back and take this slide in chapter 7. Alright, so please remind me if I forget to do so. Type. Now, let's jump to pie chart. Let's have a list and calculate its total. So we can have calculate total of a list. This is a new file. So calculate the list total. I only need my main function here. I'm going to have a list, مثلا num list. Again, you can get these values from the user. 4, 7, 2.3, 900, 4.88. There we go. How can I calculate the total for this list? I need accumulator. So total is 0. Then loop through the list for num in this list, in num list. So num will take the first value, then the second, then the third, then the fourth. What do? Add it to total. So total plus assignment operator num. After the loop is done, if you want to display the result to the user, you can simply print an F string, something like total, and then the value of total. And here we go, a very simple example to calculate the total of the numbers in a certain list. Run. This is the run. Here we go. This is the total of these numbers. Questions here? Any questions about how to calculate? Is this new really? Is this the first time we've done something like this? No, the loop is exactly the same. It's just that the difference here is that we are getting the values from a list. So nothing really is new. Alright. Let's now have an example of a function. Let's say مثلا, let's say this function receives a list of numbers. This function then creates a new list that have the same numbers, however, incremented by 1. This function then returns the new list. So again, a function that accepts a list as an argument creates another list that have the same numbers as the original list. However, these numbers are incremented by how much? By 1. Did you create the 5? So I don't need this anymore. خلاص. Okay, Leonard, let's have the list. Let's keep the list. I'm going to define the function. Let's name it مثلا list increment. List, what is it? You can say مثلا list function. List increment. It accepts a list. Again, you can name it whatever you'd like. مثلا list 1. Right. Inside it, it creates another list. For example, list 2. So let's say, here we go. Let's create an empty list. Now I'm just going to loop through the elements of the received list. So for num in list 1. Now how can I add an element to a list using which method? Append. There you go. So list 2 dot append num plus 1. And don't forget, after the loop is done, to return the new list. Return the new list. So here you go. It receives a list, creates another one, loops through the elements of the received list, then adds each element incremented by 1. At the end, after the loop is done, the list is returned. The new list is returned. Type. In my main function, I can call the function and print the result in the same statement. So print, you know what, let's print the original list first. So print f string original list, then the value of num list, and then print f string incremented list. Then what should I do here? What should I do? Call the list increment function. So between braces, call the list increment function and pass which list to it? Huh? ايش اسمها اللي عندك؟ Num list. Very good. Then pass num list. So this will call the list increment function, passes num list to it. This will jump here. It will receive num list in list 1. Create another list for num in list 1. Now list 1 has the elements, these elements. Add 1 to each of these elements before you append it to the new list. Return the list, so the entire function call here is replaced by the new list. Shall we run it? Yalla. Here we go. This is the original list. This is the incremented list. 4 becomes 5, 7, 8, 2.3, etc. Questions? Any questions here? Is it clear, everyone? So again, like the concept is the same. We will not be learning anything here. It's just that we are using a list instead of other types of values. Like. So any questions about this function? Any questions? Okay. Like list comprehension. What is a list comprehension? Using a list comprehension, you can create a list, a new list, from another list without having to write a loop. So again, using a list comprehension, you can create a new list from or using another list without having to write a loop. How? So list comprehension, it's a concise way, summarized, مختصر. Concise expression that creates a new list by iterating over the elements of an existing list. Let's look at this. Now here, this is a very traditional way to do what? To copy a list using a loop. So I have this one, list 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to copy it, so I create an empty list. We've already seen this before. 4 item in list 1, list 2 dot append item. Now list 2 will have a copy of each of the elements from list 2. Right. Instead of writing 1, 2, 3, 3 lines, we can have a list comprehension. How? Look at it. There we go. This is what a list comprehension looks like. Between brackets, what do you put? This is only an example. Item 4, item and list 1. What does this mean? On the left side here, you have what we call the result expression. Yani, what do you want to be added to the new list? What is the result? This here is going to be added to the new list. Then, starting with the loop, this is what we call irony. This is what we call the iteration or the loop expression. Here, this works just like a regular loop. For item and list 1, item is going to take each of these values. It's going to be 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So when it is 1, put it as is in list 2. When it is 2, again put it in list 2. Okay? Type. Do we only use it for copying? No. But let's read through this before I give you other examples. So again, here on the left side we have the result expression. On the right side, starting with the 4, we have the iteration or the loop expression. You can read it from the right side. For each item in list 1, put item in the new list. The iteration expression works like a for loop. In this example, it iterates over the elements of list 1. Each time it iterates, the target variable, item, is assigned the value of an element from list 1. At the end of each iteration, the value of the result expression, which is item in this case, is appended to the new list. Like, another example. Look at this example here. Like, I have this list 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at the list comprehension. Item to the power of 2 for each item in list 1. What are the values in the new list? 1, 4, 9, 60. Excellent. Excellent. So it's not only about copying. No, you can do whatever you'd like to the result. For each item, and by the way, item is just a variable name. If you call it a chair here, put chair here. Alright? It's just a variable name. If you call it Abdullah here, you also put Abdullah here. What's your question? Alhamdulillah. I had the hunch. Okay? So whatever you call it, make sure it's the same in the result. طيب, the example about the radius. If I have a list of different radiuses, then I want to create a list of the areas of these circles, the circles that have these radiuses. What should the result be if I'm going to use a list comprehension? What is the formula for calculating the area? Very good. So here I'm going to have math.pi times r to the power of 2 for each r in the radius list. There you go. If you call it radius here, you call it radius here. You call it r here, you call it r here.
If you don't, does it affect?
What do you mean?
Like if I name it different, does it affect?
Of course it affects. How is it going to know that you are talking about the same thing if you name it different way?
Yeah.
You'll see an error basically. They're like, what is this value? I don't see this value. Type. So here we go. So this is another example. So after this code executes, list 2 will contain the values 1, 4, 9, 60. Type. Does it always have to be numbers? No, of course not. Here, I have a list of strings. Winking, blinking, and not. I want to create a new list using this one, using list comprehensions. Len list. Yalla, you tell me, look at this. Len of S for S and str list. What are the values in the new list? What are the values in the new list? Yalla, count, quickly count. 6, 7, 3. Now if you remember, I told you before about the len function. The len function always return the number of elements. It doesn't only work with lists, it works with many things. It also works with strings. Because a string, Abdullah, is also a sequence. And we will see this inshallah in chapter 8. A string is a sequence. So the len function also works with it. Len of a string, it will tell you how many characters this string has. So for each S in this list, what do? Give me the len. 6 from here, 7, and then. Alright, everyone? 6, 7, and 3. Yes.
بعدين get what you're saying.
Of course, you're not going to get what I'm saying when you are talking with Kafel Jamka. Yes, Mulani. Alright. What does the len function do, Abdullah?
Calculate the
Not
number
yeah?
of index.
No, number of elements. Tell you why are you, what? It's not index.
I mean
Yeah.
the position.
No, it's not really the position. How many elements?
3.
What? It's not len of this list, not len of STR list. It's len for each S in STR list. For each of these, I want the len. فاهم علي? So S is going to be this string. Len of this string is what?
7.
6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. طب len of this one N is what?
7.
7. And then this one?
3.
3. Here we go. فهمت الحين؟ Okay?
Okay.
You get it? So it's not len of STR list of the entire list. No, each of these elements here. Because I told you, the len function works with strings as well. Right, it works with strings, it works with lists, and it works with strings as well.
How it will look like if we split it?
6, 7. Right? Yes.
Can I just develop one now?
Quick, very quick. Fine. What if I don't want to take all of the elements from the original list? طب come sit in the front row. Here, front row, come sit. Quick, quick, quick. يلا يلا يلا. بسرعة. Okay. So what if I don't want to take all of the elements from the original list? Yani for example, again, back to the example with the radius. What if I want to create a new list that has the areas for circles with radius over 100 only? That's it. Only circles that have radius over 100. I don't want any other radiuses. How can I do that? I need an if statement, صح? I need if. Like, can I do that with the list comprehension? Yes. But let's look at the traditional way first. Here, I want to create a new list from list 1, but I only want the numbers that are less than 10. How? Create an empty list, loop through the original list for n and list 1. Check. If n is less than 10, go ahead and append it to the new list. How many lines? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lines of code. In a comprehension, in a list comprehension, look at this. Item, for item in list 1, if, here we go. If item is less than 10. So you add the clause, the if clause after the loop. Remember, the condition is always evaluated before the result. Yani you need to check that this is true before you go and you put the result. فاهمين علي? Here, can I get here before this is true? No, the same works here. You have to check that the condition is true before you do it, because sometimes the result is complicated. The result has some kind of calculation in it. So you don't do the result at all before you check the condition. So always start from the right side. If and only if item is less than 10, for each of them, go ahead and put item in list 2. Right. Let's jump to pie chart. Let me give you another example. So list comprehension, yeah. New file, list comprehension. New file, list comprehension. Right. Let's say I have this list, radius list. Okay? And the 4, 7, 2.3, 904.88. Right. Now, I want to calculate the area. What do I need? Import mean. Import mass so that I can get the pi value. Fine. Now, I want to create a list called circle area list. Now, in this list, in this list, quickly. In this list, I want to calculate the area for the circles that have radius less than 7. So again, I want to calculate, I want to create a list of the areas of these circles that have a radius less than 7. How can I do that? Yeah, you start with the result. The result is what? The formula itself, صح ولا لا? Which is math dot pi times what? Times r squared. Okay, let's call it r. Times r to the power of 2. For each r in radius list. However, only if r is less than 7. Here we go. So, the result is the formula for the area itself. Pi times r to the power of 2. For each r in radius list, however, only if r is less than 7. Which ones are going to be taken? 4, 2.3, and 4.88. Very good. Now, let's print this list to see what it looks like. So print circle area list. Run. And here we go. We have only 3 values. We have only 3 values. Is it clear, everyone? Is it clear? Clear? Okay. Very well. So this is list comprehensions. List comprehensions. What is this? Halloween, what is this? 2-dimensional lists. What does this remind you of? Nested loops. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Type. Now, this is going to be easy for you because you've already seen nested loops. Type. What's a 2-dimensional list? A list that contains other lists as its elements. A list that has lists inside of it. If it's a 3-dimensional list, a list that has lists, and these lists also have other lists inside of them. A 4, okay, you get the idea, yeah? Type. Also known as a nested list. Now, in software engineering in general, it is common to think of 2-dimensional lists as having rows and columns. A table, basically. This is how we think of it. Of course, the computer doesn't care, but we think of it as human beings as a table. And I'll show you just a visual illustration in a second. Now, why do we need 2-dimensional lists? Very useful for working with multiple sets of data. Like what, for example? Huh? Very good, very good. Information of a certain person. Let's say, مثلا, I have the grades of a certain student in 3 courses. And each of these courses has 2 exams, مثلا midterm 1 and midterm 2. So, this is my list. This list is for the grades of Umar. Inside it, I have the first list. This is for SE 100. It has 2 numbers. The first grade is for midterm 1, the second grade is for midterm 2. Comma. Here you go, another list. This list now is for math. Inside it, again, I have 2 grades, one for midterm 1 and one for midterm 2. Comma. Another list. Now this list is for physics, for example. It also maybe has 2 grades, one for midterm 1 and one for midterm 2. Here we go. Right? Let's make it even more complicated. What if I want the grades of all of the students? Just exactly what we did, but for all of the students. So, you have a big list for all of the students. Inside it, a list for each student. inside the list for each student, 3 lists, 1 for each course. Inside each of these, 2 grades, 1 for midterm 1 and 1 for midterm 2. And it can get as complicated depending on whatever type of data you're working with, yani, as needed. Alright, so they are very useful for working with multiple sets of data. But how can we access the elements inside a nested list? You use multiple indexes. Yeah, instead of 1 index, 2. If it's 3-dimensional list, use 3 indexes right next to each other. 4-dimensional list, use 4 indexes. And I'll show you examples in a second. So if you want to process data in a multi-dimensional list, what do you use? Typically use nested loops to process. Alright. Now here we have a visual illustration of a 2-dimensional list. This list has 3 lists, each for a person. Each list has the first and the last name of one person. So this is the first list, Joe, Kim. The second list, Sam and Sue. The third list, Kelly, Chris. This is why we think of it, as human beings, we think of it as rows and columns. And here, this is another illustration to show you how we can use indexes. See here, it's using 2 indexes to be able to access an individual element inside a nested list. Type, all of this is good. All of this is good. Yeah, 2-dimensional list example. Yeah, 2-dimensional list example. I don't need import math anymore. طيب. Let me use the same example that I gave you. So let's say مثلا I have a 2-dimensional list named scores. There we go. So I start, there we go. This is my list. Inside it, I'm going to have 3 lists. 1 for each course. Here we go. Let's say the first one, assuming يعني, the first one is for SE 100 method. So the student, and again, let's make things easy. Let's say that the score is out of 100. So let's say the student got, you can always get these values from the user, by the way. Anyway, so let's say the student got 89 in the first midterm exam, and then 91 in the second midterm exam. You're done with the first list, comma. There we go. The second list. Let's say these grades are for math. The student got 85, then 89. Then 84. Done. The third and last list. Let's say this is for physics. مثلا 93 and 19. Okay?
No.
Fine. Very good. Now, what is len of scores? What is len scores? Len of scores is what?
2.
3. Of course 3. It has 3 lists inside it. صح ولا لا? Regardless. It has 3 elements, even if whether they are lists or not, it doesn't matter. So len of scores is 3. طيب, if I try to print something like print scores at index 2, it's going to be printed. What is it? صح, لأنه الإندكس من وين يبدأ؟
93, 99.
Very good. Index always starts from 0. So scores at index 2 is the third element, which is this list. 93 and 99. Run. Here we go. 93 and 99. طيب, if I say print scores at index 2 at index 0. What's going to be printed?
Third one, then the first.
يعني
Yeah,
93. Excellent. Scores at 2 is the third element. It has 2 indexes, 0 and 1. What is at 0? 93. So if I run this, here we go. 93. Very good, excellent, excellent. Now you understand how indexes work with multidimensional lists. Fine. Yes,
Why is it printed 93?
you tell me. Scores at 2 is which list?
The third one.
The third
93,
one.
99.
So this is index 0, this is index 1, this is index 2. Here we go. At 0, which one is at index 0?
Isn't the interpreter will jump back to the
والله ما ادري هذا الانتربريتر عندك. ليش جمب باك؟ انا قلت له جمب باك.
zero, index 0.
عندك 0 here. Here. فاهم كيف؟ You use the first index to access the element. Okay, now you are here. The second index is to access the next element. You get it? If there is another list inside, you add another index. Okay? Yes.
How can we break two lists? The one and the first one.
You have to play around with it. There's no يعني مش على طول يعني ما هي راح تكون إجابة صحيحة. You have to see if you need to check for something or do you need to.
No, I mean, how do we break the 93 and 99, then we get 80 and 90?
So you have to say scores at 2, then scores at 0.
Again?
Yeah, in another statement, right? Or a separate value, but they have nothing to do with each other. You get it? طيب. Now, I'm going to process this list. Let's say مثلا I want to print the scores of each of these courses in a separate line. So again, I want to print all of the scores of a course in one line, then the other course in another line, then the other course in a third line. Okay? I need nested loops. 4. Now, I need to know which course I am currently at. So what am I going to do? I actually need the index anyway. Yes, I need the index anyway. So 4, let's just say مثلا C from course. N, range, len of scores. What does this mean? What is len of scores?
3.
3. Range of 3.
0 to 1.
0, 1, 2. 0, the first list. 1, the second list. 2, the third list. Type. So now I am inside the big list. We can print something like F string, scores for course, then the value of C, column, space. Now, I don't want the scores to be on the next line. I want them all to be on the same line. What should I do? End. End. Okay, I have a space here. So خلاص. End is an empty string. So, this is going to be printed scores for course what?
سي
اللي هو في البداية ايش حيكون؟ 0. Very good. Range of 3, 0, 1, 2. So C is going to be 0. So scores for course 0, then space. Right. Now we can go inside, we can use the inner loop now. 4, S from score. N, range of len, scores at index C. Remember, you told me C was 0 at the beginning, صح? Scores at 0 is what? This list. Len of this list is what? 2. Range of 2 is what? 0 and 1. The indexes 0 and 1. This is how we can access the inner indexes. Now S will be 0, then it will be 1. Like, let's continue.
4.
Now print the individual score. So F string scores at C. C was 0 here. At S, 0 at 0, 89. Then 0 at 1, 91. The end is what? The end is make the end space because I want a space between each of the scores. Alright. After this loop is done, go back. And before moving to the next course, what do I need? So now everything is printed on the same line. What do I need?
Print.
Very good. An empty print statement so that I move on to the next line before I go to the next course. Right. Let's run this, then we'll trace it again together. Here we go. Scores for course. I don't like that it says course 0. Yeah, let's say +1. So here instead of C, let's say C +1. You understand why? So that it says course 1, course 2, course 3 instead of course 0 here. C +1. Okay, run again. Here we go. Course 1, course 2, course 3. Type. So again, put main in memory. Call main. I have this two-dimensional list. Yeah. For C in range, len of scores. Len of scores is 3. I have 3 elements here, 3 lists. Range of 3 is what? 0, 1, 2. So I have 3 values. C will take the first value, 0. Type. Now C is 0, remember this. Print scores for course 0 plus 1. Here we go, course 1. With a space. Now we are here, right here. Go now into the inner loop. For S in range, len of scores at C. C is 0. Scores at 0. Which list? The first one, this one. What is len of this list? 2. Range 2. 0 and 1. S will take the first value, here 0. Go inside. Scores at 0. Add 0. Which one? 89. 0, 0, 89. And then a space. Here we go. 89 space. S now, we are still in the inner loop. S takes the next value, which is 1. Naif, you know what to do. Which is 1. Scores at, Naif, you know what to do. Yeah, لا هنا. So, scores at, again, 0, 1. 0, 1. You know 0, 1? 91. 0, 1. 91. And the space. Here we go, 91 and the space. Now we are here. No more values for S. The loop exits. What do we have here? Empty print, meaning a new line. So now we are here. Go back. Now we are still in the outer loop. C now takes the next value. And here, 1. Scores for course 1 plus 1, 2. And the space. Here we go. Now we are here. Yeah, S in range. Len of scores at 1. Scores at 1, this one. Len of 2 is mean. Len of this list is what? 2. Range of 2. 0 and 1. S takes 0. Yeah, scores at 1, 0. 1, 0 is mean. 85 and the space. Then S takes the next one. 1. Scores at 1, 1. 1, 1. 84. 84 and the space. This loop is done. New line. Here we go. And finally, C takes the third and the last value. Here mean 2. Scores for course 2 plus 1, 3. Go inside. S in range. Len of scores at 2. Here we go. Len of this is 2. Range 2, 0 and 1. S takes 0. Scores at 2, 0. 2, 0. Meaning what? 93. 93 space. S takes the next value 1. Scores at 2, 1. 2, 1. Which one? 99 space. This loop is done. New line. Now we are here. We go back. Any more values for C? Done. So the loop exits and that's it. Is it clear now? Is it clear? Don't you think it's cool that you can now understand this easily compared to at the beginning of the semester? Sorry? Remember when you were very scared of nested loops? And now it's fine, it's easy. Alright. So this is two-dimensional. And finally for this chapter, tuples. Some people say tuples. What's a tuple? Very, very similar to a list. The only difference, we cannot change it. Once you create a tuple, خلاص. يعني you cannot use append, you cannot use remove, you cannot use sort, you cannot use reverse. Anything that you cannot access an element inside the tuple and change it. You cannot do any of that. So a tuple is an immutable sequence, doesn't change. Very similar to a list. Once it is created, it cannot be changed. And this is what it looks like. What is the difference?
No list.
Parentheses. Instead of brackets, parentheses. So brackets for list. You have to remember this. These are the syntax rules. When you create a list, you use brackets. When you create a tuple, you use parentheses. When you create, inshallah, a dictionary, this is in chapter 9, use braces. Okay? So here we go. So this is a tuple. Once you create it, it cannot be changed. طيب, what can we do with it? We can use indexing. Indexing. Now, when you use an index with a tuple, you still use brackets. It's an index. With an index, you always use brackets. Okay? مو تشوف تقول خلاص tuple parentheses يعني حتى في الاندكس حقها parentheses. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. When you are using an index, whether it's a list or a tuple, you always use brackets. Okay? To access the element. طيب. It has methods like the index method. The index method returns an index, doesn't change anything, no problem. You can use the len function with it. You can use the min, the max functions, no problem. You can use slicing expressions with tuples. Why? Because they return a copy. They don't change the tuple. They only return a copy. So again, no problem. You can use the n operator, the concatenation. Concatenation also returns a copy. Repetition also returns a copy. So all of these can be used fine with tuples, no problem. We cannot, however, no append, no remove, no insert, no reverse, no sort, anything that changes a tuple, you cannot access an index and change the element. You cannot do any of that. And if you try, you'll see an error. Type. Why? Why do we have tuples aslan? Like we have a list, it has all of the capabilities. Why do we have tuples?
Faster.
Fast.
More secure.
So very good, very good. Security is very important. If you are dealing with sets of passwords or sets of credit card numbers or something, you can't put them in a list and then, risk the possibility of someone either accidentally or intentionally changes the list in somehow. Okay? So what do you do instead? You use a tuple. Okay? Faster, especially when it comes, Abdullah, you know what to do. You know what to do. Quickly, quick. So, it is safe, secure, what else? Faster, especially when you are dealing with huge amounts of data. Especially texts. It takes a lot of processing time, becomes a headache if the data is way too much. So, if you know that your data is not going to change, use a tuple. It's faster, much faster. Also, if you get advanced with Python, especially with the library in Python, you will see that a lot of the functions in the library of Python require tuples. A lot of them. Right? We didn't see them. Maybe we will see some of them, just a few of them in the next chapters, but there is a lot of functions, especially in the library of Python, that actually require the use of tuples. Alright, so these are the reasons why we have tuples and not just use lists anyway. Like what if you want to use a tuple, but you don't know the values? So you'll have to ask the user, or maybe you will get the values from a file or something. What do? You put them in a list, no problem. Create a list, ask your user, or get them from a file, and then we have built-in functions that convert a list to a tuple and vice versa. We have the tuple function, takes a list, converts it to a tuple. We have the list function. We talked already about the list function at the beginning of the chapter. The list function also works with tuples, meaning it can take a tuple and converts it to a list. This way, if there is any changes you want to do on a tuple, convert it to a list first, and you can make your changes. If there is a list that you want to make secure, Go ahead, get your values from the user, from a file, wherever, then use the tuple function to convert it to a tuple. Right, everyone? Okay? طيب, a very quick example of tuples. Yeah, tuple example, new file. Tuple example. Tuple example. So let's say مثلا I have n tuple. So again, when I a tuple, which type of container should I put? Parentheses. There we go, parentheses. مثلا 1.2, 5.8, 99, minus 4.8, 867. Here we go. And this is my tuple. This is my tuple. Now, let's print it so that you can see what it looks like. Let's access an element. I cannot change any elements. Again, if you try to okay, let's do it. Let's print it and try to access it. So, مثلا n tuple at index 3. Which one is going to be printed? Excellent, negative 4.8. Very good. Type. Let's run this first. Here we go. So this is what the tuple looks like. And negative 4.8. What kind of brackets or what kind of containers did I use when doing the index? Brackets. Even if it's a tuple, you still use a bracket when you use an index. Right. Now, let me do this. I'm going to try to change one of them. مثلا n tuple at index 1. على طول شايف اليellow line؟ شايفين؟ Okay, see the yellow line? I'm going to ignore that. It will tell you the error. Now here we go. Don't support item assigned. This is the error. Yalla. What happened? Type error. The tuple object does not support item assignment. You cannot change an individual element inside the tuple. Here we go. Okay? You cannot use append. You cannot use remove. You cannot use all of these methods that actually change the tuple. طيب, can I convert it? Yes. You can say list one مثلا, list and tuple. Now print list one to see that it's an actual list. Here we go. The list function is just built in. You call it straight away. Yeah, let's look at list one. There we go. See list one? Now it's a list. Now you can do whatever you like. You can change it however you want. Questions? Any questions? Questions about chapter 7? How do you like this chapter? It's fun, it's easy, yeah? طيب أكيد أنتم سمعتوا من الدرس ثانيا. Yeah, it's the holiday season on quiz. So that's why we'll have the quiz after the holiday. Okay? But you have to be ready. You come back, you study. طيب قبل لا تروح. So raise your hand if you have studied. Raise your hand. Yeah. Where's the ladies? أنا حصير أخلي الموضوع بالنية. ما درست صفر. ما درست صفر. تقول لي درس بونس. عشان أوريكم. مثلا إيه واللي يكذب عاد نيجاتيف مارك. Alright, everyone. I'll see you all after the holiday. Have a nice holiday, everyone.